I understand that everything seems doom and gloom in the news, and certainly there is a lot of bad stuff going on. But let's be clear, there is some good news. In fact, in primaries happening in multiple states, progressives have been doing surprisingly well and look set to expand the progressive caucus in Congress. And joining us now to discuss some of these races, as well as the establishment opposition to many of these candidates, is national affairs correspondent for The Nation, as well as the author of Coronavirus Criminals and Pandemic Profiteers, Accountability for Those Who Caused the Crisis. John Nichols is on the show. John, how's it going?
I'm honored to be with you, my friend.
Well, we're always glad to talk to you.
It's going okay. It's going okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty fair considering everything. But we're gonna focus on a little bit of the positive development. So you have a recent piece for The Nation entitled "Democratic Insiders Keep Bashing Progressives, but Progressives Keep Winning Key Elections." So what are some of the elections that you want to spotlight that you think are giving you hope for progressives in this cycle?
Well, I decided not to do it the easy way, which would have been to focus on what's happening in New Hampshire or Massachusetts or some sort of relatively more liberal place. We're doing Texas, and in Texas they had the first round of primaries of the 2022 election cycle, major primaries for congressional and statewide races. And there were 3 congressional seats that were highly competitive, very, very important races. And in all 3, progressives did incredibly well. These are open seats, or in one case, challenging an incumbent. And the ones that I've been particularly focusing on are the overwhelming victory of Greg Casar, who won a primary in the Austin, San Antonio area. This is a new district, effectively a new district after the redraw. It's very Democratic, and so whoever won the primary is going to almost certainly go to Congress. Greg ran as a stone cold progressive, totally in favor of Medicare for all, Green New Deal. AOC came in and campaigned for him. Bernie Sanders endorsed him. He used Sanders in his ads. This was clearly running as a progressive. The third way Democrats opposed him, they moved money in to try and stop him. He won. In fact, he won about 60% of the vote. It was an overwhelming victory. And the likelihood, barring some unexpected development, is this guy's going to Congress. And so that's a very, very big deal. The second race that I'd really like to highlight is down on the border, US-Mexico border. And there, Jessica Cisneros, who ran 2 years ago against Henry Cuellar, the most conservative Democrat in Congress, the guy they used to refer to as Trump's favorite Democrat. And 2 years ago, she fell short. I know she fell short of making it into a runoff. This time, she's forced him into a runoff. She essentially tied him in that race, despite the fact that immense amounts of money came in from all sorts of special interests, including fossil fuel interests in favor of Cuellar. She's going into a runoff election where she's got a real chance of winning. I mean, it's certainly not guaranteed. It's going to be a knockdown, drag out race, but she could pull that off. And then, frankly, we could go down around the state also. There were a number of other primaries for congressional seats where the progressives prevailed. Candidates backed by the Working Families Party, backed by Justice Democrats and others came out as winners. And so the bottom line is that if you're at the Texas results, and this is again the first round of primaries of the 2022 cycle, you have to say right now progressives are looking strong. And why that's important, why I think we really have to focus on that, is because we have had over the last 6 months, a brutal battering of progressives, not just from right-wing, third-way, so-called Democrats, but also from a lot of the media. The pundits have been all over this thing, saying, "Well, Biden went too far. He got too close to Bernie Sanders. He was too progressive." Now that wasn't the case, but bottom line is they really developed a mantra, and I think even some progressives maybe started to believe it, but it's just not the case. When progressives run, and they put out their issues when they run on Medicare for all, Green New Deal, and also, frankly, accountability for corporations, dealing with issues like inflation and saying, yeah, we have to tax oil companies, do a windfall profits tax on them, things like that. That stuff appeals, it wins. And so I think that my bottom line is, in writing the piece and also in a lot of the ongoing coverage I'm doing, is to say that we just have to actually look at the numbers and break from a false narrative that a lot of DC pundits tried to spread.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they tried to pin the destruction of Biden's agenda entirely on the progressives who are willing to vote for it, rather than the so-called moderates who blocked it at every single turn. And the argument that America, which delivered Democrats wins in the House and then the White House and the Senate, is now swinging hard against the left, as you point out, just isn't backed up by some of these primary results. Particularly look, there have been cases where like relatively strong progressives have run, not emphasizing those issues as much. But as you point out with Greg, it's central to his campaign. He's not hiding any of that. And to our audience, if you want more about both Greg Casar as well as Jessica Cisneros, we have interviews on our channel with both of them. But the establishment opposition, John, is hardly new. They've opposed virtually every good progressive that's won elected office. Do you think that progressives are getting more skilled at getting past those barriers? Do you think that it's a thing of the progressive message is just it's more accepted by more people? What do you attribute to the success that we're seeing in the cycle?
It's a great question. Look, in the case of both Greg Casar as well as Jessica Cisneros, these are people with experience. Jessica Cisneros ran 2 years ago, ran a great campaign, but didn't quite make it. So she was working in territory where she had already been active. In the case of Greg, he's was a longtime Austin City Council member, very, very out front, very active in the community. So progressive candidates who are stepping up are often people who know their way around. It's not just an idealist, a great person who, kind of looked at the issues, looked at the circumstances, decided to take a risk. These are people who, by any measure are up to the task, right? They are credible candidates by their background, by their experience, by their, knowledge of their districts. But then there's something else, and I don't think we should underestimate this. To my mind, what we have just been through needs to be understood. We are 2 years into a pandemic. In this pandemic, we have seen massive profiteering. We have seen massive disregard for the great mass of humanity. We've recognized the vulnerabilities of our society. We don't have a national health care plan. We don't have a social welfare state. We as a country have been hurt, and a lot of people have suffered a great deal, both disease, but also economic setbacks, et cetera. When you look at it from that standpoint, it's not surprising, frankly, again, if you're logical, that the progressive agenda is actually very, very appealing. I mean, it makes sense to say, after we've been through coronavirus and we're still in it in many senses, why don't we have a national health care plan? Why don't we have single payer Medicare for all health care? It makes sense to say at a time when oil company profits are going through the roof, when their expenses are not anywhere near, what they claim, and jacking up gas prices, to say no. I mean, these guys are profiteers; they're ripping us off. So in many ways, we've reached the moment where the progressive message is, it's the message for the moment. And I do think that when capable candidates have that, they can do very, very well.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. People are suffering and they want answers, and it's working, I think, as you point out, for some of these progressive candidates, but even ones who aren't truly, like Biden. When he ran as the most progressive version of Joe Biden that we've had in 50 years of him being in public life. Now, that isn't how he's necessarily governed. He hasn't necessarily made good on the promises he made, but he clearly understood what was going on. And so I expect more progressive candidates to win. I also expect more to feign progressivism, understanding the appeal of that, like with a Kirsten Sinema. So that's one of my worries. What do you think about that?
It's a totally legitimate worry. Look, it's a two-step process for progressive politics. Number one is to, voice the agenda, right? To actually speak to it, to talk about Medicare for all in the proper terms, to talk about a Green New Deal in the proper terms, to talk about taxing the rich, to embrace Bernie Sanders' exactly appropriate message that billionaires should not exist. That we should tax people down to a level, where we address inequality. The fact of the matter is you need to say these things. And for a long time in the Democratic Party, under the incredibly destructive influence of Bill Clinton and the New Democrats, we wouldn't even say stuff like that. Democrats wouldn't even say stuff like that. And so breaking through that barrier means something. It is consequential, it is valuable. But then it's the second step of the process. People are going to become incredibly cynical. They're going to give up on this if you elect folks who are running on progressive agendas and they don't deliver, if they don't come through and actually do things. And so it's still up for grabs. And it's one of the reasons why it becomes important to look genuine progressives, people with track records who've actually done the job. Again, that's one of the reasons why Greg Casaro is such a big deal down in Texas. He was running against another candidate who had a lot of sort of more centrist support. But what Greg was able to do was say, hey, look at my record. I have been out there on the picket lines. I've been out there fighting the battles. And that made him, it gave him credibility. Again, I'm not trying to constantly reference Bernie Sanders here, but one of the reasons why Sanders did so well and why he kept, building out this base, especially among younger voters, was because people looked at his record and they said, well, this guy's been at it for 50 years. Yeah. It's pretty clear he's not going to sell us out. And I think the same thing happens when you look at somebody like Greg and I think Jessica Cisneros, very young candidate, but what she did is somewhat different thing, but really fascinating. And she just kind of opened up her stories. What she told, how she talked about was so real and so personal that I think she made a very, very human connection with people in those border counties, especially where she talked about the reason she was for single payer Medicare for all healthcare is because she remembers when people in her family got sick and they had to, go by the side of the road and sell food to try and raise money to pay for healthcare. I mean, that's a story that voters in that district understood, and I think it had an impact.
I think so. And great details there. If someone's watching this and you want more information about these races, you can check out the article, Democratic Insiders Keep Bashing Progressives, but Progressives Keep Winning Key Elections in the Nation by John Nichols. John, we appreciate you taking time out in your travels to break down some elections with us. And we look forward to speaking to you again.
I'm really honored to be with you. It's a great discussion and really important, I think a very important pattern in our politics right now.
I think so too. Thank you. Be well. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.